on the Jewish Question is a work by Karl Marx, written in 1843, and first published in Paris in 1844 under the German title Zur Judenfrage in the Deutsch Französische Jahrbücher. It was one of Marx's first attempts to deal with categories that would later be called the materialist conception of history. The essay criticizes two studies by Marx's fellow Young Hegelian Bruno Bauer on the attempt by Jews to achieve political emancipation in Prussia. Bauer argued that Jews could achieve political emancipation only by relinquishing the particular religious consciousness, since political emancipation requires a secular state, which he assumes does not leave any space for social identities such as religion. According to Bauer, such religious demands are incompatible with the idea of the rights of man. True political emancipation, for Bauer, requires the abolition of religion. Marx uses Bauer's essay as an occasion for his own analysis of liberal rights, arguing that Bauer is mistaken in his assumption that in a secular state, religion will no longer play a prominent role in social life, and giving as an example the pervasiveness of religion in the United States, which, unlike Prussia, had no state religion. In Marx's analysis, the secular state is not opposed to religion, but rather actually presupposes it. The removal of religious property qualifications for citizens does not mean the abolition of religion or property, but only introduces a way of regarding individuals in abstraction from them. On this note, Marx moves beyond the question of religious freedom to his real concern with Bauer's analysis of political emancipation. Marx concludes that while individuals can be spiritually and politically free in a secular state, they can still be bound to material constraints on freedom by economic inequality, an assumption that would later form the basis of his critiques of capitalism. A number of scholars and commentators regard on the Jewish Question, and in particular its second section, which addresses Bauer's work, the capacity of present-day Jews and Christians to become free, as anti-Semitic. However, a number of others disagree. The argument between Bauer and Marx. In Marx's view, Bauer fails to distinguish between political emancipation and human emancipation. As noted above, political emancipation in a modern state does not require the Jews to renounce religion. Only complete human emancipation would involve the disappearance of religion, but that is not yet possible within the hitherto existing world order. In the second part of the essay, Marx disputes Bauer's theological analysis of Judaism and its relation to Christianity. Bauer has stated that the renouncing of religion would be especially difficult for Jews because Judaism is, in his view, a primitive stage in the development of Christianity. Hence, to achieve freedom by renouncing religion, the Christians would have to surmount only one stage, whereas the Jews would need to surmount two. In response to this, Marx argues that the Jewish religion does not need to be attached to the significance it has in Bauer's analysis, because it is only a spiritual reflection of Jewish economic life. This is the starting point of a complex and somewhat metaphorical argument which draws on the stereotype of the Jew as a financially apt huckster, and posits a special connection between Judaism as a religion and the economy of contemporary bourgeois society. Thus, the Jewish religion does not need to disappear in society, as Bauer argues, because it is actually a natural part of it. Having thus figuratively equated practical Judaism with huckstering and money, Marx concludes that the Christians have become Jews and, ultimately, it is mankind Judaism. The second part of Marx's essay is frequently cited as proof of Marx's anti-Semitism. Let us consider the actual, worldly Jew, not the Sabbath Jew, as Bauer does, but the everyday Jew. Let us not look for the secret of the Jew in his religion, but let us look for the secret of his religion in the real Jew. What is the secular basis of Judaism? Practical need, self-interest. What is the worldly religion of the Jew? Huckstering. What is his worldly god? Money. The Jew has emancipated himself in a Jewish manner, not only because he has acquired financial power, but also because, through him and also apart from him, money has become a world power, and the practical Jewish spirit has become the practical spirit of the Christian nations. The Jews have emancipated themselves insofar as the Christians have become Jews. In the final analysis, the emancipation of the Jews is the emancipation of mankind from Judaism. History of Essay publication. Zur Judenfrage was first published by Marx and Arnold Ruge in February 1844 in the Deutsch Französische Jahrbücher, a journal which ran only one issue, from December 1843 to October 1844. Bruno Bauer published the monthly Allgemeine Literaturzeitung in Charlottenburg. In it, he responded to the critique of his own essays on the Jewish question by Marx and others. Then, in 1845, Friedrich Engels and Marx published a polemic critique of the Young Hegelians titled The Holy Family. In parts of the book, Marx again presented his views dissenting from Bauer's on the Jewish question and on political and human emancipation. A French translation appeared 1850 in Paris in Hermann Ueberbeck's book Questcek la Bible d'après la Nouvelle Philosophie Allemande. In 1879, historian Heinrich von Treitschke published an article Unsere Aussichten, in which he demanded that the Jews should assimilate to German culture, and described Jewish immigrants as a danger for Germany. This article would stir controversy, to which the newspaper Sozialdemokrat, edited by Edward Bernstein, reacted by republishing almost the entire second part of Zur Judenfrage in June and July 1881. The whole essay was republished in October 1890 in the Berliner Volksblatt, then edited by Wilhelm Liebknecht. In 1926, an English translation by H. J. Stenning, with the title On the Jewish Question, appeared in a collection of essays by Marx. A translation of Zur Judenfrage was published together with other articles of Marx in 1959 under the title A World Without Jews. The editor Dagobert D. Runes intended to show Marx's alleged antisemitism. This edition has been criticized because the reader is not told that its title is not from Marx, and for distortions in the text. A manuscript of the essay has not been transmitted. Interpretations. Chaim Maccoby has argued that On the Jewish Question is an example of what he considers to be Marx's early anti-Semitism. According to Maccoby, Marx argues in the essay that the modern commercialized world is the triumph of Judaism, of pseudo-religion whose god is money. Maccoby has suggested that Marx was embarrassed by his Jewish background and used the Jews as a yardstick of evil. Maccoby writes that in later years, Marx limited what he considers to be antipathy towards Jews to private letters and conversations because of strong public identification with anti-Semitism by his political enemies both on the left and on the right. Bernard Lewis has described On the Jewish Question as one of the classics of anti-Semitic propaganda. According to several scholars, Marx considered Jews to be the embodiment of capitalism and the representation of all its evils. Abram Leon, in his book The Jewish Question, examines Jewish history from a materialist outlook. According to Leon, Marx's essay states that one must not start with religion in order to explain Jewish history. On the contrary, the preservation of the Jewish religion and nationality can be explained only by the real Jew, that is to say, by the Jew in his economic and social role. A notable expert on anti-Semitism, Robert Wistrich, stated, "The net result of Marx's essay is to reinforce a tradition traditional anti-Jewish stereotype, the identification of the Jews with money-making, in the sharpest possible manner. Isaac Deutscher compares Marx with Elisha ben Abulia, Baruch Spinoza, Heinrich Heine, Rosa Luxemburg, Leon Trotsky, and Sigmund Freud, all of whom he thinks of as heretics who transcend Jewry, and yet still belong to the Jewish tradition. According to Deutscher, Marx's idea of socialism and of the classless and stateless society expressed in the essay is as universal as Spinoza's ethics and God. Shlomo Avineri, while regarding Marx's anti-Semitism as a well-known fact, points out that Marx's philosophical criticism of Judaism has often overshadowed his forceful support for Jewish emancipation as an immediate political goal. Avineri notes that in Bauer's debates with a number of Jewish contemporary polemicists, Marx entirely endorsed the views of the Jewish writers against Bauer. In a letter to Arnold Ruge written March 1843, Marx writes that he intended to support a petition of the Jews to the Provincial Assembly. He explains that with the fact that while he dislikes Judaism as a religion, he also remains unconvinced by Bauer's view. However, he also clarifies in the letter that his support of the petition is merely tactical, to further his efforts at weakening the Christian state. In his book For Marx, Lewis All thus acclaims that, in On the Jewish Question, Hegel's philosophy of the state, etc., and even usually in the Holy Family, Marx was merely applying the theory of alienation, that is, Feuerbach's theory of human nature, to politics and the concrete activity of man, before extending it to political economy in the manuscripts. He opposes a tendency according to which capitalists no longer read as On the Jewish Question. On the Jewish Question is read as capital. For all thus the essay is a profoundly ideological text, committed to the struggle for communism, but without being Marxist, so it cannot, theoretically, be identified with the later texts which were to define historical materialism. David McClellan, however, has argued that On the Jewish Question must be understood in terms of Marx's debates with Bruno Bauer over the nature of political emancipation in Germany. According to McClellan, Marx used the word Judentum in its colloquial sense of commerce to argue that Germans suffer and must be emancipated from capitalism. The second half of Marx's essay, McClellan concludes, should be read as an extended pun at Bauer's expense. Hal Draper observed that the language of Part 2 of On the Jewish Question followed the view of the Jew's role given in Jewish socialist Moses Hess' essay on the money system. Stephen Greenblatt compares the essay with Christopher Marlowe's play The Jew of Malta. According to Greenblatt, authors hope to focus attention upon activity that is seen as at once alien and yet central to the life of the community, and to direct against that activity the anti-Semitic feeling of the audience. Greenblatt is attributing Marx a sharp, even hysterical, denial of his religious background. Yoav Perl sees Marx shifting the debate over Jewish emancipation from the plane of theology to the plane of sociology, thereby circumventing one of Bauer's main arguments. In Peled's view, this was less than a satisfactory response to Bauer, but it enabled Marx to present a powerful case for emancipation while, at the same time, launching his critique of economic alienation. He concludes that the philosophical advances made by Marx in On the Jewish Question were necessitated by, and integrally related to, his commitment to Jewish emancipation. Others argue that On the Jewish Question is primarily a critique of liberal rights rather than a criticism of Judaism, and that apparently anti-Semitic passages such as "money is the jealous God of Israel," in face of which no other God may exist, should be read in that context. For sociologist Robert Fine, Bauer's essay echoed the generally prejudicial representation of the Jew as merchant and moneyman, whereas Marx's aim was to defend the right of Jews to full civil and political emancipation alongside all other German citizens. Fine argues that the line of attack Marx adopts is not to contrast Bauer's crude stereotype of the Jews to the actual situation of Jews in Germany, but to reveal that Bauer has no inkling of the nature of modern democracy. While sociologist Larry Ray in his reply acknowledges Fine's reading of the essay as an ironic defense of Jewish emancipation, he points out the polyvalence of Marx's language. Ray translates a sentence of Zur Judenfrage and interprets it as an assimilationist position, in which there is no room within emancipated humanity for Jews as a separate ethnic or cultural identity, and which advocates a society where both cultural as well as economic differences are eliminated. Here Ray sees Marx in a strand of left thinking that has been unable to address forms of oppression not directly linked to class. The political scientist Professor Ian Hampshire-Monk wrote in his textbook, "This work has been cited as evidence for Marx's supposed anti-Semitism, but only the most superficial reading of it could sustain such an interpretation." Also, McClellan and Francis Wien argue readers should interpret On the Jewish Question in the deeper context of Marx's debates with Bruno Bauer, author of The Jewish Question, about Jewish emancipation in Germany. Francis Wien says, "Those critics who see this as a foretaste of Mein Kampf overlook one essential point. In spite of the clumsy phraseology and crude stereotyping, the essay was actually written as a defense of the Jews. It was a retort to Bruno Bauer, who had argued that Jews should not be granted full civic rights and freedoms unless they were baptized as Christians." Although he claimed to be an atheist, Bruno Bauer viewed Judaism as an inferior civilization. Jonathan Sachs, Chief Rabbi of the United Kingdom, regards application of the term anti-Semitism to Marx as an anachronism because when Marx wrote On the Jewish Question, virtually all major philosophers had expressed similar views, and the word anti-Semitism had not yet been coined, let alone developed a racial component, and little awareness existed of the depths of European prejudice against Jews. Marx thus simply expressed the commonplace thinking of his era, according to Sachs. Reference to Munzer. In Part 2 of the essay, Marx refers to Thomas Munzer. The view of nature attained under the domination of private property and money is a real contempt for, and practical debasement of, nature in the Jewish religion. Nature exists, it is true, but it exists only in imagination. It is in this sense that Thomas Munzer declares it intolerable that all creatures have been turned into property. The fishes in the water, the birds in the air, the plants on the earth, the creatures, too, must become free. In his apology, in large part an attack on Martin Luther, Munzer says, "Look ye, our sovereign and rulers are at the bottom of all usury, thievery, and robbery. They take all created things into possession. The fish in the water, birds in the air, the products of the soil, all must be theirs." The appreciation of Munzer's position has been interpreted as a sympathetic view of Marx towards animals.